and thank you for viewing and following and subscribing and doing all of the things. More importantly, thank you for reaching out and making your comments. It's at the point where I may not be able to respond physically to each one of you, and I don't want to do an AI chatbot to actually respond, so I don't think that's fair either. If I get the chance, I would try to respond to you as you make comments, but I also take that information and process for, hey, what's really on our minds and what's our next logical podcast to talk about. And boy, oh boy, if I thought property taxes was a hot topic before, yeah, temperature out there is even hotter than I expected. So I am not afraid to get into the fire, and I want to bring you some additional updates because this is an ongoing situation as we see going with our property taxes and the big debate. So shout out to Terry 92104 for sending in the comment. Let's face it, so many bills have died because the legislature doesn't really want to fix this problem. The people will have to do it. And I agree with you, because one of the things we were talking about on our last podcast was about Governor DeWine striking out those line items that actually would have at least started some of the process towards healing this huge debate over property tax. And I know we don't always get the specifics of this, but our Ohio Association, our realtors, are advocates for property rights, for consumers, for the overall process. And yes, that means even for this property tax debate, we're going to bat. And our donations to our lobby funds, our RPAC, and all of this are used to help lobby those points of discussion regarding property tax, regarding home ownership, regarding developments, and all of the things that matter when it comes to housing. So not to say this is their advocacy on my podcast, but obviously I'm a realtor in the area, part of this association, and I do keep in touch with what they are lobbying for on our behalf. And I'm a consumer. I live here. I support our systems, and I also question some of our systems. So I just wanted to go into the specifics of those line items that Governor DeWine vetoed, because this has created even more of this property tax standoff. So it is an unprecedented increase in property taxes over our past few years, and it's made homeownership too expensive for many home buyers, as well as in some cases it has cost many of our longtime homeowners to lose their homes. They're forcing that decision to buy lower cost, get into rentals, do something to avoid that property tax burden that is now unreasonable for them. So that's not where we want things to go. And I am going to tell you that Ohio Realtors has partnered with other organizations to form the Ohio Taxpayer Protection Coalition. That's a different name there, right? It's focusing on making these fair changes to Ohio's property tax system. What does this mean? It means that we want a meaningful reform so that this opposition that is being made by lawmakers and against the people, somehow we can come to a consensus to say, where can we make this work? Yes, you need the funds, but no, are you being accountable? And no, I can't afford this high burdened amount. So lawmakers have taken action and have included bills such as House Bill 96, which was designed to protect taxpayers from unrestrained growth in property taxes. Now, unfortunately, this is what Governor DeWine vetoed, and instead he's called for a working group of stakeholders to review possible solutions. They are supposed to come up with an answer by the end of September. So we still have time. I've got bells and noise and everything going off. I'm so sorry. We still have time to get our voices heard. And this is why I am relentless in making sure we continue to give you, the people, the information that you need. So the vetoed property tax provisions, specifically that he line item through, would have allowed county budget commissions comprised of our local elected officials to review and reduce levies if they feel too much revenue is being collected. If they feel is probably the operative words there. And, right, once the money goes up, they're not going to give it back. That's kind of our concern, is that there needs to be something quantitative as to when this is stopped, when it is reduced, and how we get that money back if there is actually a surplus. Second point is shielding the Ohioans from unrestrained property tax growth by requiring certain types of levies that include emergency and substitute levies to be counted towards that 20 mil floor for school funding purposes. So it's another way of capping that you can't just keep going and exceeding this amount. If you need special funding, then it's still going to count towards that base of the 20 mil floor, which is what they're saying is pretty much the base. Third item is eliminating the ability to seek future emergency and replacement levies. That has caused a lot of confusion among the voters, because you just hear that this is needed funds and you don't realize that they may have had a surplus in another area but they can't use it, yada, yada, yada. We just keep going on and on with this. And the fourth item is reducing property taxes from homeowners living in school districts that carried over more than that 40% of operating expenses from the previous year. That again is that sticking point. If you have money in your coffers, why are you asking for more money? Spend the money you have. And if you don't need to spend the money, then you give the money back to the people who have given it to you. I don't know. I think that makes common sense, but who am I, right? Just a gal living in Washington Township, trying to sell real estate, and what do we got going on? All this craziness that makes it impossible to do some of the things that we all need to do, such as pay our bills, and not feel like we are giving it all away, that we are actually earning some of this and being able to keep it for ourselves. Hey, there's here's a unique idea. So what's next? The legislature's inability to do any of this means that the debate is continuing on. Yes, we are still collecting signatures, and I tell you, I can't give you a consistent time of when I'm in the office because I'm almost always here. Hey, it's Sunday, and I'm doing this so that you have a Tuesday update on our podcast, but you got to know that if you've got my number, you can find me. Hopefully it's always for good reasons. But I'm happy to meet you here at the office if you are interested in signing the petition to abolish property taxes. So abolishing the property taxes is something that is continuing to take signatures because we don't see an easy answer coming from our legislators. This isn't the first time this has been up for debate, people. This has been over a period of years. And over a period of years, they still continue to show us that we are not their priority. They are still going to do the things that they've done, and the money is still sitting in there in reserves and not being used. It's not being returned. And I'm sorry, but I got a problem with that. And many of you as well have problems with that. Let me share a few more of my viewer comments at Frank S. Grump 5. Hey, restricting property taxes to 1 to 1.5% will accomplish nothing. They will just increase the value of your property tax to tax you more. Property tax is an unrealized gains tax. They are stealing the inflated value of your property from you. The only way to stop this is to end the property tax completely. Taxes should be performance-based, off the condition of the economy, in an end-user sales tax. Remember, everything they are doing fills theirs and their corporate associate pockets. Not all corporations are bad or in this crap. Get the ones that are. Thank you very much, Frank. Yes, I agree. I do think that if you put a dollar amount on there as a percentage, then they just keep increasing the value, as you said. And hey, we're realtors. We know when you buy or sell a home, you are taxed on it. Why is that not enough? Why are we then taxed every year? This debate goes on because, as Mark Jocelyn 9912 talks about, property tax should be based on the purchase price of the home. When you sell the house, the tax will be based on the new purchase price. So this is an issue that we find with a lot of people who then are buying a property, is that because they bought it at a higher value, those prior tax bases is no longer what they're going to be paying. And sometimes it's a big surprise. Because if the original, let's call it the original owner, bought the property for $100,000 or $150,000, well, they're selling it now and it's $300,000. That means that new home buyer is now taxed at the higher rate. Okay, I agree. Maybe that's an answer, But is that what they are putting into their calculation? Because they've got to go off of what are the current tax bases for their payment, and they get qualified by a lender at that amount. Well, then the next year's bill comes out and now it's double that amount. They may not actually qualify for that. So this changes the game of home buying and selling process, and obviously that's where it starts affecting people and my business, and we want to make sure we have an easier answer, right? So we're going to dive into this because, let's just say we've gone down the rabbit hole. You guys have asked a lot of great questions, and I'm overwhelmed by your support, and I cannot say enough how much I appreciate that. This past week, we've had more people come into the office to sign the petition to abolish the property taxes, and I think that is so important. And again, I'm in Centerville, it's Montgomery County, but I'm so adjacent to Warren County, Greene County, Miami County, any of the areas. If you're in this area and it's convenient for you to stop by, you just text or call me and I will make sure that I'm in the office, or we can set a time for an appointment for you to stop by. It literally will take you just a minute to sign that property tax petition. You don't need anything as far as, I don't have to check your ID. You just need to know that you're a registered voter and for what county, and then the address that you were registered at is what you fill out on the form. No abbreviations. You hear me say that all the time. But once you sign that, it's it. That's it. I am collecting the signatures and we'll be sending off a packet, hopefully with a lot of names for our area to show their support in abolishing these property taxes. Now, if you're in an area outside of that, it isn't something that's being signed online, not for this specific purpose. It is not an online signing process. It is an in-person signing process. So if you're outside of our immediate area, but you're seeing this and you're like, hey, I want to be able to do this, the website has changed. So it is now AXE Ohio Tax. So it's AXOHTAX.com. And there will be a list there of all the signing locations that you can go to for whatever area that you might be into. And I will run that across the screen there so that you know where to go. All right, a couple more I want to share with you. The TJ Diamond Show, okay, G4H, thank you. I appreciate your support and your comment. Here, interesting. The truth is Cleveland spends over $40,000 per student. Summer food programs to free computers are all nonprofit scams sucking off of the school district. Almost all of them kick the money back to council members' bank accounts. Basically, USAID concept locally. Every other school system teaches kids for around $15,000. Even high quality private schools. The property taxes for me in Cleveland Heights were $1,000 a month, so I was forced to sell. Sorry to hear that. In Cleveland, they doubled this year to $750 a month for a house that cost $165,000 to $145,000. It's such a horrific scam. And this is the problem, is that we are seeing people priced out of their homes, and that is not what we want. That is not what we need, because when that happens, there are going to be even bigger housing crises and issues. So I appreciate the comment. I definitely want to be able to help those who need some assistance. There are programs out there, and hey, I'm all about programs if they work for you to use them. And certainly we've paid into it, so you might as well do it. At Troy Rice 7813, thank you for your question. Do fire departments sit on cash reserves the same way schools do? Actually, a great question. And so you, my friend, are the one that started me down this rabbit hole, and then I was like, okay, I gotta get some information so that I can answer these questions, because I think it's great that we are having this conversation. And that is the reality that I have, is it's not just about this conversation that we're having, it's about the conversation we need to be having with our school systems, at our township meetings, in our city councils, and more importantly, when we go to vote, we need to know that we've had these conversations and what answers we've gotten, what we like, what we don't like, and then know what we are actually voting for or against. That is the crux of all of this is we need to be informed when we start making these decisions instead of just blindly going and voting and not understanding what the ramifications of, or worse, not showing up for a vote, and then the few 1,200 people that show up, guess what? They get to make the decision for us, because it's not a vote of how many people are there, it's a vote of how many people show up. So we have to show up, we have to stand up, and we have to speak up, and that is why I'm here. And you got me all off on a tangent, so I'm sorry. Let me go back to that question, Troy. Troy Rice 7813. Here is the answers that I could find, is that it's not easy to find that. So, because their budgeting is in different aspects, what I have found is that the amount of money that's not spent in Ohio's police and fire department budgets is not necessarily easy to determine because of how they do it. There are complexities to how the budgeting is set. There's local funding versus state funding, and then there's specific versus general funds. All of this sounds like gobbledygook at this point, right? But here is what I did find. Pension fund underfunding, so it's called pension fund underfunding. Go figure. The Ohio Police and Fire Fund has been structurally underfunded for many years. The Ohio Capital Journal, roughly $600 million paid into last year. However, a proposed increase in contributions is meeting resistance from cities that are struggling with other financial pressures. Go figure that. Surplus funds and other financial notes. Ohio recently concluded a fiscal year with a $1.3 billion surplus in its general fund. This is a significant amount of unclaimed funds, according to the Toledo Blade. So of that, these funds could be potentially channeled towards various state and local needs, including the potential of police and fire services. But it's not a direct reflection of unspent money within those departmental budgets. Again, sounds like a lot of blah, 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 right? Because there's no real answer. Well, if there's no real answer, then we have to keep asking the questions. There is federal funding, and Ohio receives significant federal funds through the American Rescue Plan Act for the state and local governments, some of which were used to address issues like violent crime and support fire responders. But again, how is that reflected on the budget? Grant programs. Specific grants exist for fire departments and law enforcement agencies for their equipment, training, and other needs. Does that then reduce the need from your consumers? I would say yes, if you're getting it from somewhere else. But there's no single easily quantifiable figure of unspent police and fire department budget money in the state of Ohio, in our jurisdictions, and that is just going to be the issue, is that because of how the accounting is done, because of how the funds come in, it isn't an easy answer. So, but let's target back. If there is a surplus in funds, and Ohio is reporting that as $1.3 billion, okay, that is in this specific category. We know that Ohio schools have $10.5 billion in surplus. That's quite a bit of money that you shouldn't be asking for more property taxes or levies or anything like there. I mean, let's spend the money as we have it and go not to our pocket, but into those coffers. All right. So now, this is either going to be a very long podcast or I may split this off because who knows where I'm about to go with this next one. At Great18013, thank you. Here is what you asked. I know I researched this from time to time, but I can't believe these numbers like Ohio collected $18.5 billion in property taxes. Can you research this and see how much these days are collecting? These are unreal numbers. Yes, it is unreal numbers. Even just what we talked about, right? I mean, if I had $1.3 billion in excess somewhere, I would be living a very different life. Don't know about you. So Ohio and those numbers, and everybody lives in a different community, right? But what I did do is say, where I live is Washington Township in the Centerville area. So I can talk specifically about this because guess what? They do this great thing. They come out with an annual report. And probably, if any of you get an annual report for the community where you live, do you actually take a moment and look at it? Or most of the time we just toss it aside, right? Toss it aside because what does it mean to me? Well, guess what? This is where the numbers are. So, Great one, 8013. Here is what I found, and this is going to be specific to my area because that's the detail that I have information for. And if I can say this case, probably I can extrapolate that across all the other communities. And maybe those numbers aren't exactly, but it's certainly going to give us the idea that more money is coming in and it's coming from the people, and the people are the ones who's having the hardship, and we're the ones that are having to battle for what's ours, right? And you know I've had my battles with Washington Township because I don't live in an HOA, but suddenly I've got all these rules and I'm not happy about it. Go figure. I want to talk to you about what the property taxes are right here in Washington Township. And this is based off of and given information out of their 2024 annual report. So these are new numbers. This is at the end of the year, fiscal year has been closed out. Here's where we are. So according to their report, Washington Township collected $46.4 million in revenue. That is strictly from property taxes. Now, here's the kicker. They only spent $42.5 million. Only, that seems ridiculous for me to say, but that's the way this is going, right? Which means there is a surplus. That is $3.9 million in surplus in our Washington Township area, and yet our property taxes went up. There is no mechanism in place when there is an overfunding surplus that it comes back to the taxpayers. Down the rabbit hole and looking into this, what actually happens when the money is collected? So for every property tax dollar that they collect, 55% of it goes to the schools, 18% goes to our Montgomery County, and 19% is what stays here in Washington Township. The rest then is divided between the college, the park districts, and libraries. So put that aside. If I paid $100, only 19 of that is going to Washington Township specifically, right? Okay? But if I took the dollar amount of property tax that was received, the $46.4 million, and I divide that by the number of households that are in Washington Township that are paying this, that equals $1,680. So why is my tax bill almost $6,800, 4 times more than what the average is? Does that mean there is some real disparity in who's paying or not paying and who's being charged or where these funds are coming from? I mean, I've got real questions. So I wanted to dive into this actual report that they have provided. And yes, I understand that we are getting benefit of services for all the money that is received. However, if the services aren't charging or costing the amount that is being received, then you should lower your price point, right? If it doesn't cost you $200, then you should lower it to $100. And that way you don't have excess of funds. Oh, but wait, you want the money in your bank account to earn interest, not in ours. No, not a good reason. So, of the money that the township receives, they divide it and spend 42% on fire and EMS, 12% to the police, 17% for roads and infrastructure, 13% to recreation and parks, and 13% to the general government. There's just a little bit left for other. Okay, not a big deal. So to the question that was asked about our fire and police services, hey, our fire and police services do a great job in Centerville, and we had more call outs in our fire department last year, which was over 10,000 calls in 1 year. And then our sheriff's office, because in township it's covered by the sheriff and not the city of Centerville Police. So our sheriff's office provided contact of 35 deputies that are dedicated to our area. These are critical services. And the good thing is that we didn't have loss of life from any of our fires because our fire department was able to respond very quickly, and most of those fires were contained in the area where they started. Hey, that's all great. But we come back to, if of that 19% that they're doing, almost half of it is going to fire and police. Okay, we're great, we're fine. We don't know specifically how much of any of that reserve is because we didn't need anything more there. So where is our reserve, the money that's in surplus, coming from or going to? The surplus problem is that we already fund more than what our township spends. That 3.9 million surplus equals about $140 per household. But my property tax bill of $67.50, less than $6,800, you're contributing far more than that $140 in the surplus budget. So they're getting more money than what they're spending, and there's nothing to offset that in how the calculations are done. Grants and outside funding, efficient operations should mean that our bills go down. Instead, township keeps collecting a maximum level and the banks the difference. They get to make the interest, and I think that's not right. Okay, so if we all are getting the same emergency service coverage, right? I make the call, you make the call, we both get the same type of answer. Same fire and EMS service, and we drive on the same roadways, but our families are paying different amounts. Some are paying $1,600, some of us are paying $6,800, while others, who knows where they fall. It's not tied to the cost of the services, it's tied to how the state forces property taxes to be calculated. And that's where the township isn't correcting for what the issue is, that burden, the township or the state. This is really a state issue, and that's why these problems are coming up, is because it's how the state is calculating property taxes to be assessed that the local entities are gaining and the municipalities are ahead, sitting on surpluses, and our state budget also has a surplus, but hey, nobody's talking about the surplus money. They just keep talking about how much more money they want to get. So what can we do locally? Here's the thing. We have to be informed. We need to know that we speak up, and we need to sign the petitions, and we need to be vocal. So push for those levy rollbacks when the levies are presented. Make sure that you're voting, and make sure that we have cap reserves so that the taxpayers aren't forced to fund more than what's reasonable as a cushion. Yes, you need some reserves, but no, you don't need 10 years of reserves. I mean, seriously. Demand truth in taxation hearings where the officials have to explain surpluses before asking for new levies. We need to be proactive in this at the grassroots level locally in order to know that it makes a difference when we get to the state level. And form a citizen budget committee so that we can monitor how our funds are used. I mean, I think there just needs to be accountability with these entities as to, yes, an annual report that I can look into and say, hey, why is this like this? And, oh, okay, you have an accounting firm that audits, so that means that they are auditing so that the numbers make sense. But what does that show as far as any surplus? There has to be accountability when there's surplus. So the next time when you open your property tax bill, whether it's the $1,600 or the $6,800 or whatever dollar amount it is, more than what you're used to paying, remember, Washington Township is already running a surplus, or your district is already running a surplus. Our state is running a surplus. We're paying more than it costs to provide those services. And unless we demand accountability at this local level, state level, nothing is going to change. We have to keep applying the pressure, which means even though we're not on the ballot for this year, we have to keep signing this petition, because if we let up, legislators are going to go again and not pass anything. It's not going to be bills introduced or passed, and it just becomes this whole same issue. So let's talk about the biggest piece of your property tax bill, which is our schools. And we reported that 55% of that property tax number goes directly to the schools. So in Centerville, my $6,800 means about $3,800, $3,600 is going to the school every single year. Now, their fiscal report shows that property taxes remain the district's single largest revenue source. They're projecting $121 million in revenue, okay, with the majority of that funded from our property taxes. They do get state funding and they get rollbacks that add another layer to this, but this is what helps to keep the classrooms open and the teachers paid. So of that money, Where does it go? The biggest portion of the money that is collected goes to paying the teachers' wages and salaries. That is supporting the teachers, the staff, and our administration. The benefits, their benefits, are for healthcare, retirement contributions, and mandated cost. And then the educational support that this does is from the curriculum, transportation, technology, special education services, and extracurriculars. So in other words, they've got all the money allocated, and that's where the tax dollars are going that they receive. If we look at their financial report, the schools are operating with careful planning. They compare their budget plan to actuals every month, and most of their categories come in close to projections, sometimes slightly under budget. That is showing a very strong fiscal management, and that is what we want to see. With that transparency, I feel comfortable that our Centerville City Schools are taking the money that they have and they are utilizing it to the best that they can. So they reflect the real cost of maintaining quality instruction and support staff. The district is not running large surpluses like our township. So they are being actively fiscally responsible and transparent with their numbers, and this is what we want to see. This is the type of report that makes you feel like, okay, now I could dive into that and say, well, is there any cost saving benefits? Is there anything we can do? But at the very base level, having at least that transparency and seeing that there is not a surplus, that we are managing and accounting for this on a monthly basis is point on. That kudos to you, Centerville Schools, for making that actually work. So while I feel good about knowing that our school system is actually doing what we want and they are wisely accounting for their funds, we should also be asking, why isn't the township held to that same standard of accountability? And township, the city, the municipality, at all levels, we should be asking these questions, because the money doesn't just go into one pot. Our property tax, as I reported, is broken out into these 6 different categories. Well, then that's 6 different categories that I want to have accounting for. And if I don't have it, then how do I know that you're spending my money wisely? And more importantly, Centerville Schools is showing on this fiscal report that they aren't carrying a surplus. Then I'm asking, of the state reported $10.5 billion in school surplus funds, where is that money? What school system is sitting on the money? What multiple school systems is sitting on that money? And have they given it back to their communities who are supporting them but don't need to continue to support giving more money? Compare this with another entity that I went to, and again, all of this information should be public information. The consumer, we as the people, have the right to know about this. So I should be able to go onto any municipality website, look for their financial report, and be able to review it. I went to the city of Dayton, and I gotta tell you, I'm very disappointed, because the city of Dayton, their report is citing 2015. That is 10 years ago. You have not updated your information on your website. You give me no financial review that I can say, where is my tax dollar going? And I'm gonna be honest, City of Dayton has lower tax for property taxes than most of our areas in our area around here. So if I can't find the numbers there that are viable, usable, or anything, then I got a bigger problem. Like, what are you hiding? You're not talking for 10 years about what the numbers are. This should be something that's very easily available to see. So if you have a problem finding it in your community and you want me to try to take a deep dive, I'm happy to do that. Hey, it's a Sunday, I could be out sweating outside, doing yard work, or hey, even selling houses. But the bigger issue is that this was an opportunity for me to come back and address some of the comments that we're receiving and hopefully get you back on track. This is going to be a continuing conversation for a while. One, because come the end of September, if we don't hear what the task force DeWine has put together says about helping to reduce the burden of property taxes. We need to keep taking the signatures and offering the support out there for people to get the answers that they need, and more importantly, to be able to understand when it comes time to vote, maybe it's time to make a change with the person who has been not following through on the promises that were made. Promises made, I said broken promises, and yes, somebody called me out, and it's just flat out lies. Because honestly, if you tell me, hey, I'm not reducing property taxes because once we get this money in, we aren't giving it back, then at least I have an idea that come time to vote the next person, maybe I vote somebody else in place. Now, if that person comes in and they are talking about property tax reform and then they don't do anything, they aren't going to get my vote of support continuing on. So this is even more than what we saw with the housing prices going up. It's the interest rate that buyers are having to pay. No, it's property taxes. Property taxes are the number one biggest issue that is being talked about right now amongst our people. And believe it or not, as much traction as we got with our whole HOA scandals and all the stuff that goes on when you've got these Karens running places and taking in money, yes, topics about people having the right to live in their home and function and not be burdened by cost or by people or by rules. This is affecting our quality of life, and I don't know about you, but quality of life goes a long way, and I will always support the right of ownership, the right of people to speak up and to be heard, and for there to be accountability. Okay, so that's it. That's all I got for you today. I'm going to get in there and answer some online commentary, and hopefully continue the support, continue to get the word out there. I'm easy to find. If you send me a text or give me a call or leave a message or send an email, any of the ways that you want to get a hold of me, I'm happy to, and more importantly here on YouTube, thank you. I'm happy to get back with you, and I'm happy to take the deep dive, ask the hard questions. We are going to have some candidates coming up who are running for different offices here locally, and these questions are going to come up because it is the number one thing that people are interested in. Thank you for your support. Thanks for watching, and please share the word, spread the love, and be kind to people, especially to yourself. And remember, I'm here for you. All right, take care. Bye-bye.